Hello, everyone. I'm Punar Givanch, and welcome to What's Wrong With the podcast. Today, we have the great pleasure of speaking with Rashid Mushkani. Rashid is a lecturer at the Université de Montréal and a researcher at Mila, the Québec AI Institute, where he builds public AI for cities and cultural institutions. His work focuses on participatory datasets, pluralistic alignment, and governance rooted in data rights and sovereignty. He leads StreetReview, a community-trained system for evaluating street quality, and AI Alignment for Inclusion, a program that co-designs alternatives with residents and civic partners. Rashid's current scholarship advances the right to AI and an augmented, co-produced AI lifecycle, practical ways to let affected communities set goals, metrics, and guardrails for the models that shape public space. Based in Montreal, he collaborates with community organizations and municipalities to ensure AI amplifies local knowledge rather than overwrite it. Enjoy our conversation. Rashid, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. For our listeners, if you can share a little bit about you and about your background, that would be great.
My name is Rashid Mushkani. I teach and research urban planning and AI at the University of Montreal. I'm also a researcher at Mila, which is Québec AI Institute. It stands for Montreal Institute for Learning Algorithms, where I develop projects on how to make public spaces inclusive with a co-production process. There have been multiple projects, but at least five that I can name. My background is originally architecture and engineering, and yeah, that's a brief bio. So.
Thank you for sharing. So, for our listeners too, I'll give a little bit of context on how we came together. So, anybody who's listening to this podcast knows we're very big on co-design, and we're very big in like scaling that process across different practices and industries, whether you're doing something in industrial design or urban design. And obviously, since the more like the Gen AI explosion since 2022. We've been very interested and kind of underwhelmed also about, like how does co-design become more popular in AI lifecycle, and how come we are not seeing enough of this conversation? And I mean, there's various reasons to that. And then, the tech industry itself has a lot to say to this problem, more so than probably others. But in kind of our own maybe desk research around this, we came across your paper on co-producing AI lifecycle, and I can't tell you how excited we were, and especially to see this implemented in urban design space, where we have firsthand saw or have seen or heard that it's even harder to implement inclusive design for various reasons or excuses. But so seeing, these both domains coming together in something that we're very passionate about, we were really, really excited to see. And before we kind of go into more your approach in more detail, I would love to get your perspective on why you think this is not a more mainstream, common conversation, even though, when we ask anybody about any issue in the world, from urban design to any other domain, one of the answers or the methodology would be collaboration, right? Like we're very big on
Exactly.
the term collaboration for everything.
Exactly.
Which doesn't necessarily mean we're doing it, but it's like we need to collaborate, even though we know this, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think we're not seeing this in the space of AI?
First, the nature of developing technologies has been such. I mean, historically, co-design has been absent from this dynamics, in a way, user-centered designs have always been there. But to develop technology with the people, based on their needs and based on their aspirations and values, that has always been absent in a sense. Um, First big reason is that it's resource intensive, it's time consuming, and these two they go against the capitalist market that you wanna have products at maximum speed
Mm,
and at less cost. So, in a way, co-production at the beginning, it required resources, but at the end, like the output might be better, and that might reduce the initial resources, like in a way, compensate for. It's like solars when the initial
yeah, yeah,
investment
yeah.
is a lot, but in the long run, it's not that much. But the thing is that recently, like these big technological companies, like they call them GAFAM, like Google, Facebook, and Apple, and others, they are starting to consider co-production methods
Mm,
um, for 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 like academics who know how co-production and co-design works. And they have always criticized their behavior, like these big tech behaviors, as participatory washing rather than
yeah,
actual participation,
yeah,
because they are trying to please the process, not actually including and valuing the output of those who are producing. So to summarize, it's like resource intensive and it requires a lot of time. It's not only applicable to technology, but also other domains. Like in education, we have inclusive curriculum development, which in a way, because it's publicly mandated,
mm,
the operationalization is much easier.
mm,
And also in the field of urban planning itself, like we want to make cities for all. Uh, Intrinsically, this line of thinking should be part of it and should be operationalized easily. And it has been advocated for, I think, from mid 60s, 1960s, by movements of like Jen Jacobs and others. But still, we are a bit distant from actually operationalizing because of a lot of factors such as political will
yeah,
or budget or yeah time.
yeah. I mean, even the like the implementation framework, right? Like who is doing what? And I think to your point, and you said participatory washing in a very accurate way that, it's not that teams are not necessarily talking to any audience. It's more when this is happening and to what extent this is happening, and is there really like a shared goal or understanding? Like, is there really joint decision making in this? Because I've seen many times in tech, especially when people are kind of engaged with for the exploratory phase and then for the testing phase,
Hmm.
it has been called co-design, right? Which is
Hmm.
not the case. That's just research and implementation.
Exactly.
Or in urban planning too, what we see there is a lot of like listening to the people, surveys, town halls, right? That happens
Hmm.
in the beginning. But then the team that is put together to realize a project potentially, do they really synthesize what they're hearing? And
Hmm.
does that really translate into design insights? And if it's happening, who is implementing it? And if it's being implemented, who is really tracking if those insights were honored in the design, right? So
Exactly.
it's an ecosystem problem rather than
Hmm.
just one problem. And then in that, like, how frequently are we updating people or like even getting feedback from people? Is it just like getting their thoughts in the beginning and then showing, which is generally what we see, right? That happens. And
Exactly.
then they're like, oh, the community hearings never work because people get angry at each other. And you're kind of like, people are not unreasonable if you share the feasibility or viability constraints, for example, and try to ideate alternatives, they would understand something may not be feasible, right? But if you listen to them and they share XYZ and then you come with ABC at the end, like you could see how they could be
Exactly.
frustrated. So,
And and most of the time in case of existing projects, they're in selling framework rather
Yeah.
than actually building. So this co-design and co-production processes are processes that are evolving.
Yeah.
In this process, the citizens or the stakeholders, plus all the developers and whoever is engaged, let's call them all stakeholders,
Yeah.
they should evolve through this process, and not only in terms of learning from each other's experiences and
Exactly.
like spheres of knowledge, but also producing an output, which everybody is in a way involved in it. It's not that thing like that's not happening. On
Yeah.
what's happening is like at the beginning they have an information session, like raising awareness. In those classic information session, what they do is they like project an already implemented, developed project. And then it's like more kind of a pitching.
Yeah,
So we
yeah,
want to sell you this. This is good for this is good for that. This will
yeah.
bring you these benefits. Um, and then uh, and then there will be like angry people who are not paid to participate.
Exactly.
They have like different motives that they are angry about. So like there are a lot from this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like it's, when you look down at the granular human elements of all of this, like if you give something to people to react to, people will react. Like rather than like don't have something for anybody to
Mhm.
react to, just create it together, right? And you also touched upon a part where like obviously, and especially if you haven't done any co-design work in the past, it could be very time consuming
Yeah,
until you kind of get a handle of all, like, especially when you go about recruiting, maybe co-creators, right?
definitely.
And it does also seem, and at times maybe actually it's less resource intensive because maybe you're getting deeper insights actually.
Mhm.
So there's more efficiency in the process. But most importantly, what you said in terms of like, because the process is designed appropriately, there is potentially big advantages at the end,
Mhm.
where what you're creating is not a failed output, right?
Mhm.
And which is way more expensive. But we're so used to doing that. We're used to things failing that it seems like okay for that cost to happen. But like, if you start saying like, well, we would like to have this budget to also bring on people, that gets more reaction, even though that might be a marginal cost compared to what might happen in the outcome, which could be even more than a monetary cost.
Exactly.
And we often talk about like the lack of metrics around that, or lack of even tracking what really failed. Is it the process, or is it really
Mhm.
the output? Because often like we see this in sustainability, right? We see this in inclusive design efforts. Oh, like this was discontinued, or this failed, or this didn't work. Oh, and then the blame is on the inclusive design and not necessarily like what went wrong in the process.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think, and this is where like, we have a love and hate relationship with AI now. I mean, hate is an extreme. Maybe love is also an extreme world, but we're very skeptical and very excited about AI at times. And this is where AI as a tool feels very exciting. Going back to while this is all happening, now we could actually track what's going on. And if anything, we also have another co-creator helping us out figure out all these I guess the plurality of the voices, right? So why not with that kind of go into what you've been researching and working on, and even like the challenges around that too, because let's talk about those in a way that like what other challenges you're facing to address these challenging challenges that we were talking about.
Of course, there are a lot of challenges when you try to implement a co-production project, but in a way, once you start implementing it and you get used to it, the challenges are getting easier. Like the
Yeah.
problems are there, but they become so banal for you that you can easily cope with them or like alter them or solve them in a way. Um, so especially specifically with AI, it's
Mhm.
for some people, it's a sensitive topic. When especially when you're reaching out to them to ask that,
Mm.
um, we're interested to develop an AI model, and are you on board with us as a partner to work on this AI? So this AI can be able to evaluate the spaces, like the public space quality in the
Mm.
neighborhood. And at the beginning, some participants, they were sensitive about what what they might lose in this dynamics, or
Right,
they're
right, right.
losing on their privacy, or they're losing on their data, what they're consenting in to participate.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of unclarity, there's a risk dynamics in it, the perceived risk by participants. And there's also, on the other hand, there's some interest or like curiosity by some participants who really are interested to learn what AI has to offer, what are like the ins and outs of this black box. So in a way, it's quite difficult to explain how the decisions are produced. For example, you write a sentence, and then in a chat GPT, in a large language model,
Hmm.
then you get an output. So those outputs are a bunch of tokens that has been trained from a lot of data. So how those outputs are made, uh, it's possible to explain, but it's quite difficult to provide like logical explanations, because
Yeah,
whole dynamic is kind of an input and output. It's designed that to more rectify and revise the output in order to make it human aligned. So
yeah,
we input a bunch of data and we output human aligned responses.
yeah. Hmm.
We don't know what's happening inside.
Yeah. We'll never know if it's really aligned. We know the responses might be
Exactly.
aligned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this provides a kind of a curiosity for some people when you're doing the outreach stage for a co-production process. And beyond that, it's like also there are frameworks of institutional frameworks within which you're operating. Um, I operate in a research institute, like in a
Yeah.
research institute, which is Mila. Another one is university, which is University of Montreal. Both of them have, not Mila, but University of Montreal has a research ethics board, which
Yeah.
within that we have to comply with some researcher ethics when we reach out to participants.
Mm.
If you're doing a co-production process, then you're also intrinsically in a conflict in this dynamic, because you
Mm.
want to work with citizens as partners, not as participants of research. So they are, in a way, experts who are giving their input within
Yeah.
this project, and you're developing this project together. They're not like research subjects themselves. This is also kind of a difficult dynamics to maneuver
Yeah.
within which institution you're situated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, this would be completely different if you're within a company. Then that the whole situation would be other things. So
Yeah. The recently in a class there we had a guest lecturer who leads UX research for the healthcare institution. And when like my students were asking questions, one of my students was like, for our thesis now, we're going through the IRB process, which is, very complex. And we're wondering like in that time, what else we can do as research and da da da. And then the person was like, I'm sorry, we never do that. And so and then you're kind of seeing also like, okay, this is how research can go really wrong by companies, but also not having a process that kind of like dictates the way you're going to approach a process or slow things down very much is also a possible opportunity in this space. But um, I was kind of laughing like the gap between the academic or like research institute and how in practice things really happen. But and I think that touches upon like what you're saying is, well, unfortunately, right? Like now we're kind of framing, okay, lived experience is equally as important as professional expertise, right? If at some point, at some cases, it's not, if not more, right? Because you can't go to school for a lived experience.
Hmm.
That person has that domain. Um, and so it should feel natural to bring in people as advisors, consultants in projects, right? But then as they're representative of the communities you want to serve, what does that mean? And I think like one way of for us to be navigating that is running research first, and within the participants, then we recruit for co-creators so that not everybody, we're not necessarily kind of paying everybody to be part of the process, but more like creating a team from within the audience to be able to participate and be a project team, which has its own challenges in itself, but is one way kind of like getting around concerns around, how do we make sure we hear or create space for diverse voices, but also how do we make sure these voices are in part of the process. Um, I want to kind of like double click on the process and how you go about co-producing. And in your paper, you also, talk about the co-framing, co-design, co-implementation, like going through those processes. Could you like briefly describe what you mean by each of these phases and how the participatory methods show up?
Uh, yes, I would be happy to do that. Before talking about that, I would like to highlight a point in terms of representativeness.
Yeah.
So usually when we work with citizens in terms of co-producing a project, then there are two dynamics. You either frame them as representative of that particular group,
Yeah.
depends on your theoretical framework and what how you situate yourself. But for us, it was more a kind of each individual represents an intersectional identity.
Mm.
So each individual has been represented by diverse faces that they themselves portray. So they cannot represent the same person
Yeah.
from their same demographic group
Yeah.
because demographically categorizing is like reducing, is more kind of a reductionist
Yeah.
approach
Yeah. Yeah.
to,
So
to
true.
intersectionality. What we did was we tried to develop a method that this method facilitates diverse diverse recruitment or like diverse partnership. So within this dynamic, we try to be as open to anybody
Hmm.
who are
Hmm.
willing to work with us, uh, and we try to be aware that they are representing themselves, not representing their communities.
Yeah.
So this was one of our way of thinking within the
Yeah.
projects that
Yeah.
we
Yeah. Yeah.
and afterwards, so initially, what we mean by like any co-production process begins with co-framing. So co-framing is when you want to define the problem itself.
Hmm.
You have you might have budget, you might have ambitions, and as a researcher or as a developer, you might have some ideas. So for your idea or for your project that you're developing, is there a deployment area? Do you identify a region where it's going to have an impact on?
Mm.
So the first step is to reach out to the people who are living in those geographic region. If it's like a global impact, then reach out to anywhere you can, but try to make it diverse and intersectoral in a sense. And ask them about like the framing of the problem itself, how we can frame this problem and define it. Then the second stage would be the design of it. Like you and together try to further concretize the problem itself and
Hmm.
define the problem and come up with a method that how we can solve the problem or have a better or alter the problem to a better problem in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there will be an implementation phase that you want to implement it. Of course, this is the most challenging part where all individuals who participate in co-framing
Mm.
They're not as competent in terms of their expertise to participate in the implementation as they were in the framing.
Yeah, yeah.
But in here, this is like more your role to implement and carry out whatever output came out of the framing phase or design phase. And then there will be a deployment phase where you want to test it with actual stakeholders and those who
Mhm.
are participating. And then there will be maintenance, which this whole process stands for a life cycle of technology,
Yeah.
which has like from beginning of life to end of life, and when it's going to be obsolete. Um, you wanna in the maintenance phase, you wanna also tackle those questions of when it's going to be obsolete. Within this dynamics, what you're actually exchanging is you're exchanging forms of knowledge which exists between these different spheres. Each sphere is represented by each individual who have different experiences. So in a way that product is evolving through this, and it's coming out. It's more kind of a process oriented justice rather
Yeah.
than output
Yeah.
oriented. So initially, the main argument for this was that since AI can be harmful, from like those big risks of like existential risks to like tiny bias or fairness issues. At the beginning, we were documenting how we can develop best and more fair AI models.
Mm.
We did a lot of literature review, and at some point, we documented more than 29 definition for only fairness,
Oh my God.
and each of them falls within like group fairness, individual fairness, and subgroup fairness.
Mm.
And when you mathematically want to translate this within the actual model itself, it's really complex, and
Yeah.
it's include a very you're reducing everything from like reality to something which is distant. So in a way, you can argue that any any framework of fairness would intrinsically be unfair to another group.
Mm.
So this is like if you have an output-oriented framework.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what we were thinking of, okay, instead of that, since the output can be anyways can be difficult to work with, why we don't make the process more just and fair? So people who are going to be impacted by this, they participate in making it, and they make those decisions. If they're okay with it, then that's their preferences. If they're not okay, they can alter and they're in control. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So many things you mentioned there I want to unpack. Like first, what you talked about in terms of representation and helping people understand they're speaking on their behalf and that experience is valuable and they don't need to represent the
exactly,
community. I mean, the bad practice of that, and we see actually is a very popular design tool is personas, right? Like I've seen
exactly.
personas utilized in very unethical way and very too generalizing in so many ways. And, because of lack of, I guess, useful insights, people still utilize them. And we've seen how that can go wrong too. So I think aligning on that and building transparency in the process is already way more empowering for a
Mhm.
person. And the 29 definition, it makes me laugh. There was actually a recent like a fake website that was created to make fun of like this situation where like there's a need to align the aligners now, like there's it's just, we have so many safety frameworks,
Yeah.
like ethical standards, fairness, like what does this all mean? And I 100% agree on when you do it so output oriented, it's already too late.
Mhm.
And then it also is it's hard to demystify really what's going on, right? Like then we go back, oh, 95% of AI initiatives and enterprises are going to fail by the end of the year. And when you look at the why, it's everything about the process, right? But like,
Mhm.
why did we have to look at the output to decide that, they're going to actually fail. Meanwhile, like there's so many, if like even this co-framing to co-maintenance, like definitions, builds transparency in the process,
Hmm.
already kind of alludes to the methodologies that are going to be incorporated, and it's a process design in itself that it's easier to go back and track like where might have something go wrong, what do we do next time, and it's not necessarily about the AI itself, it's the more
Exactly.
the process. And I
Exactly.
think the best analogy in my mind is like, if you're raising a child, right?
Hmm.
You don't wait for them to be 21 and then be like, so these are all the good values you should be holding, right?
Hmm.
Like there's so much that happens in the process that is so to everything, like based on everything, like what you also were saying, right? Like shared knowledge, shared experiences, communication in the process, transparency, learning from each other. Like so much happens in that process
Hmm.
that kind of helps shape a good outcome or a good person. And if, but if you have a 21-year-old behaving badly, you can't, like, it's too late to go and diagnose, like, what did we do wrong where,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Exactly. And this the good thing about the life cycle is like you can it's not like one way route.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
always go back to the design as far as you're working with the stakeholders. If you're facing an implementation, like a problem and implementation phase that it's not implementable or there's an
Yeah.
issue that needs a revision, you can this life cycle itself is not like one way route. So you can always go back and revise that phase and you can further continue.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
But like, I think all of this was self-inflicted in a way because like aren't designers, engineers, like we're all trained. My background is in engineering, and then I like came into the design world later in my career, and but both domains are very output oriented, right? Like
exactly.
that's how we're educated at school.
Yeah.
And because I remember this doesn't happen anymore. I think there is better understanding of what we mean by co-design, but like, 7 years ago, even when we used to like at an event, maybe we're talking about co-design, we would get reaction from designers, like
Hmm.
almost like offended or being like reacting to the word itself. It's like, no, no, we're the designers. And you're kind of like, well, it's not like I'm talking about a jam session on Rhino with everybody, like you're talking about curating a process in a way because design is a process that
Exactly.
everybody, like you mentioned, obviously at co-implementation, your responsibilities will be more, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Whereas in co-framing, you might rely more on the lived expertise because
Hmm.
they might guide you better. And
Hmm.
there are ways you come in and out of a process and to be able to co-create something.
Exactly.
Um, and like that
And
I think that awareness shifted, but
mhm.
like we're kind of doing it to ourselves by kind of holding on to something that really is not real. Everything is the process anyway.
Exactly. And the problem for implementation nowadays, it's quite easy to solve as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone nowadays can code like you
Exactly.
can use your natural language in any language you want, and you can interact with the system.
Exactly.
Um, so there are solutions to any problem, as far
Yeah.
as you're willing, like you have the political will and the resources to implement it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the framing is one of the most like, and when you look at kind of again, digging into the reasons why most of AI initiatives are failing, well, number one is like not well-defined use cases.
Exactly. Exactly.
I wonder why that happens.
Exactly, exactly. So they're trying to adapt and develop. There are a lot of startups that are being um, in a way they're trying to develop and deploy whatever idea they have.
Yeah.
But since they're distant from the real world or from the people who are going to be impacted by it or you
Yeah.
gonna use it, that's one of the big reasons that they're getting failed. Um, Yeah, to get back to the life cycle issue. So for us, it was the way we defined it, it was like we initially had a lot of workshops with
Hmm.
people from different backgrounds who were like in an intersectoral manner. There
Mm,
are like three main theoretical and understand like foundations for the
mm,
life cycle. First is like EDI, which is equity, diversity, and inclusion, which is based on this understanding that everyone have different lived experiences and they find themselves in different economic and social contexts.
yeah.
So they afford and they have equal rights to be participating in anything that impacts them or decision-making processes. And second was this intersectoral manner of like which you pointed out in terms of all of us are product of our education systems.
Yeah.
So we engineers or architects or computer scientists, we came up from that output-oriented dynamics, which we are really we really want to develop something at the end, and the result is. But the process we ignore it, and we also try to love the output.
Yeah.
That love and that desire for the output makes us ignorant of the process itself, to
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah,
blunt.
exactly.
And you can have a feel of this dynamic when you interact with specifically with engineers and with computer scientists, where they're developing and making these things. When you talk to them, this whole co-design or developing technology with those who are impacted by is so distant from their mindset
Yeah.
that they think of these as obsolete or invalid methods of developing
Yeah.
technology. Yeah. And another intersectoral approach is response to that, which is one of the foundations of this life cycle, which you want to reach out to people with different backgrounds of knowledge, coming from social sciences, coming from ethics, coming from law, coming from AI and computer sciences, and they come together and develop whatever product they're developing. And the third foundation was this activity theory, like expansive learning and activity theory from Engestrom's, which states that each one of us have different spheres of knowledge. So when you're interacting with each other, we are learning from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Which this helps a lot to develop that sort of critical mindset for citizens specifically, to
Yeah.
know how to position themselves. Are they pro or con or against
Yeah.
AI or development or its deployment within their neighborhood or use? Yeah.
I mean, I love this breakdown. We often say, inclusion calls for iteration because you can't, even though, yes, the aspiration is, design for all. I think like the more I practice inclusive design, the more I understand like that's a myth, right? Like there's no
Mhm.
all at one go. But
Exactly.
by having an inclusive process over time, and iterating it, you can aspire to be that, right?
Exactly.
And having this like clear breakdown and transparency in the process and who was at the table also helps you understand, look, like we weren't able to include these point of views in this round. Next round, we would love to do XYZ, right? And I think that is more, that's sometimes what we also talk to institutions and companies about who are very hesitant in going about these processes. Like, if anything, this builds more trust,
Hmm.
right? If
Hmm.
you're more transparent about the process rather than doing something and saying it's designed for all, and suddenly people who realize it's not necessarily for them are pissed, right?
Exactly.
I'm curious about like, okay, I think we we're clear on, the spotlight should be on the process, love
Hmm.
for the process, right? For the output, what AI does in the end, right? Where do you see the biggest value? I know you and I chatted before about, maybe in the end going back to, you can't necessarily include all in one go. So naturally, it takes time for any model or any product to really get there. So maybe more than like a prediction on this is what you should be doing or this will give the best results. Do you see more the elevation of different perspectives and having mindful considerations for people in planning, people in like architects, design? How does AI become most useful as an at an end of such a process or in practice?
It can have huge value if in a way the developers or the stakeholders who are participating in that process are able to grasp those points of view,
Mm,
which is initially diverse if the process itself is like inclusive. So you end up with having different points of view, how you want to make a model which behaves that way. That's an open research question in
yeah,
AI
yeah, yeah.
domain as well, which that falls within pluralistic alignment, which has different frameworks. One framework of pluralistic alignment stands that if you're for example, as an LLM, your large language model um, should provide a response to a query or to a question, including all the different perspectives or
Hmm.
the conflicting perspectives that are there, in order to give more kind of unweighted or unbiased
Yeah,
perspective to the user. So in a way, that's one approach that can be easily done, and that's
yeah.
possible to train AI models with. But to get back to how that diverse points of view are included in AI model, it's usually one average or a majority points of view, which in this dynamic you end up again ignoring those minority points of view,
Yeah.
which is in a way more bad because the process was to include those points of view, and you have those points of view in your data set if you have
Yeah.
developed a data set out of the process. So you have the data set which encodes all those aspirations and values or inputs or needs from diverse sets of participants. But for your AI model, if you train it with the state-of-the-art practices, then you end up with one majority, which
Mm,
if you use like the foundation models and align it with your
yeah.
tiny data set or big data set, no matter what, then those foundation models are already trained on the internet,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
which is what's mainstream North American culture or
Bias. Yeah.
exactly. You,
Yeah.
you end up you end up doing more harm than good
Yeah.
because you promised representation or inclusion of those minority points of view in the beginning, but at the end your output is like ignoring them again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also a dynamic, but more research and funding needs to be devoted within this framework to actually develop better tools, better AIs. Yeah.
Yeah, like the third route I'm thinking is like, let's say we have four different perspectives, two of them deeply conflicting, right?
Mhm.
Like, how would AI go about becoming a facilitator to find a compromise? It's like what I'm also curious, like, what would that look like, right? Because if AI is really good at, identifying patterns, running what like maybe some common denominators are, even though on the surface it looks different, right? Like maybe it can find more like deeper alignment there or help us dig at least. I think in any scenario we're hearing, outside of just like deciding on behalf, deciding just looking at the majority, like the pluralistic alignment is already good like critical thinking tool, like it's elevating all voices, it's making decision makers aware. And I'm wondering, if it tries to come with a solution, but also like give its reasoning, right? Like this is why like this compromise was created and this is all the thought process behind it. Could it be a critical tool or could it be a lazy tool for us to try to do?
We were testing image to text models for
Mm,
this specifically, and also this relates to your previous question, which is how architects and planners and others can use this output. We were testing with image to text models, which in a way, this response has to deal with the nature of the output.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So intrinsically, pictures afford more information. They portray more information, and if that picture has elements of space, an example, for example, like a public space, then those features that make that space can be arranged or added or removed in a way to represent the diverse points of
Mm, mm, mm.
compared to a text, which is way more like harsher and rigid, like a one end, and you might be able to like come up with different interpretation of a poetry, for example,
Yeah, yeah.
but a plain text is quite
Things like
difficult to
red
interpret.
apple. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of like public space itself or a space design, then you might be able to already have a better grasp of those diverse points of view because
Mm,
the space itself might be able to afford more diversity in a sense.
mm,
Uh, yeah, this was one of our papers that we worked on, and we developed a data set with here at the city of Montreal with citizens, and
mm-hmm.
the result was it's still it's not working very good, but you're doing way better than the initial resorting to a majority or to an average point of view, which intrinsically is like a disagreement,
Yeah.
full of disagreement process.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like, I mean, and even though I work with this space, right, I work with architects and designers, sometimes like when they explain something to me or even show me like 3D model, right? Like I
Mhm.
don't get it. Especially the bigger like when it's a building, when it's a site, right? Like I'm like, so that okay, that's what you intend to do there. Okay. And then when as it's starting to come to life, like there was particularly this one project for like the 2D did not like say speak anything to me. I'm not an
Mhm.
architect, right? And then when I saw the renders, I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. Or like the sections, like as I started to understand. And then when I visited the site, I was like, oh, so and this goes back to almost like the communication, right?
Exactly.
When you communicate something like, oh, we're going to remove any sculptures from here, or we're going to put sculptures, there's a bigger reaction to that than like
Exactly.
showing in different ways how that might happen, where suddenly people might be like, oh, actually, that looks nice. And then like how we might do that. And if AI even can help us kind of like diversify our means of communication so that we
Mhm.
could come to a agreement together on one direction, right? That is more at least, in design options that are informed by many views. And then the outputs are kind of like a synthesis of that. And then if, within that, if you're picking a majority direction, you already know like, well, at least
Exactly.
all these options were informed by all these
Exactly.
views.
Exactly.
Um,
We were testing this dynamic on which method works best.
yeah.
There was an old industrial site in Sainte Marie, which is a bit downtown Montreal. And there was this old industrial site was called Victoria Precision
Mm,
Factory, which was like an old bicycle making factory. So and now the city wants not the city but the community wants it to develop an affordable housing project. So it's in initial phases. We reached out to those community organizations, and we asked them, okay, so now we have a model and we have like a platform that we want to facilitate this like negotiation process between you guys, how you guys can come up with an output which encodes different points of view from these different community members in a way to represent as a final vision for this site,
mm,
which that would be like presented as a proposal to the city or to municipality that we
yeah,
want this space to look like this,
yeah,
which is only kind of a vision. It's not like an actual
exactly.
promise.
Yeah.
So initially we're thinking, okay, AI visualizations might trigger more expectation. There's an expectation bias.
Right, right, right.
But we prove we were proven wrong because when you say that this is an AI visualization, people they think that okay, this won't be implemented. This is hyper
It
realistic.
was the complete opposite. Oh,
Yeah,
never mind. This is
yeah. This was a good output. Like this was a good thing that we learned. And second was that like we did one workshop where around the table there were like 4 or 5 participants, and we give each of them one computer, one laptop to like write their prompts and use and interact with this model. Like we created a kind of a knowledge form for
Mm,
the project,
mm,
which the model takes the whole understanding of the project, what the project includes, and like site analysis, all
mm,
the issues that planners and architects do before the project itself. Plus, the model uses those contextual knowledge and also the prompt itself to visualize whatever participants is asking for. And
mm,
participant can skip that form. They can pick if they want a plain visualization or if they want to visualize with the contextual knowledge.
mm, mm, mm.
So like there are multiple 2 or 3 visualizations at the same time happening with the same prompt.
Yeah.
Uh, and when we looked at the setup, like there were like 4 people on the table, and each of them were in the computer typing. We thought we are doing more harm in this dynamic. Like each of them were kind of they were not communicating with each other,
Yeah.
and they were just interacting with them with a model to find the best prompt and to find the best image that represents their point of view.
Yeah.
Even at the end, we were all like discussing, like sharing our outputs, but still, this
Yeah.
was kind of a failed setup.
Yeah.
And in the other workshop, what we did was, okay, that didn't go well. Now, what you can do, we put just one computer, only one screen,
Mm.
and within this screen, they all discuss their ideas,
Yeah.
what they want the site to be, and one person would take a note or like write that prompt with and visualize that output. And
Yeah.
then they would discuss if they like it, they can like comment on it,
Yeah.
and they can
Yeah.
iterate on it. This setup worked quite well. And
Yeah.
at the end, they came up with like really nice and good outputs, which they were happy.
Yeah.
Looking at
Almost
them, they
baked in, right? They're
exactly,
co-creating the prompt. So
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. The way they were feeling happy about the process, we thought, okay, this is a kind of a good thing which works.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was kind
Yeah.
of an anecdote from.
No, this was
Yeah,
it's a beautiful like example and also just speaks to, us humans actually love collaborating. We
exactly,
just need like a defined approach and instead of just vaguely saying collaboration, like really building methods around how we might go about it so we actually get to do it in the timeline, budget, and constraints we have, like not dissing the reality.
exactly.
Obviously, this topic I can talk about forever, so but I want to be mindful of time. Any advice you would like to give for anyone who wants to push for more implementation or progress in this space?
Oh, that's a difficult question to respond. Uh, yeah, but most of the time, for myself as well, because we come up from established institutions that they
Yeah,
are training us to be a workforce within the super economic system.
yeah,
They're not necessarily equipping us with like critical thinking or like more kind of like this developing thing with others and being more collaborative,
yeah,
which you will for sure if you're working in a big company, you would face it.
yeah,
In a way, this is kind of a big step for whoever is like whoever is interested within this framework. So they need to interact with people. They need to reach out to people. They need to start to collaborate, and don't be afraid of this collaboration. Just simple writing emails to people helps a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, it helps a
Non-AI
lot.
generated emails, genuine emails.
Exactly. Exactly. Not to spam them, but to most of the time, this for myself, it has worked. And and like breaking these silos of, okay, I'm an expert in computer science, then I know. The
Yeah.
people who are like on the street, they don't know, because what I'm dealing with is like I'm solving the main problem. They're like, I don't know what they're doing. But that's not true. This mindset itself is a problem. And like trying to be aware of this mindset issue is also a big gain for everyone. And above all, what I have learned, which I think it would be good to share throughout this few participatory projects that I have done, is is like people, they are really interested to help,
Mm,
and they are really happy to see something come out of the process.
yeah.
Uh, this in a way, like looking at the future of work, in a sense, and
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know, 20 years from now or 30 years from now, most of the work that you're doing now, they can be automatized. This is like a kind of a more funny argument which you can make, that okay, then if people are jobless, then why they don't make AIs or govern AIs as their profession?
Exactly. We all need to be in it.
as as like they can talk about it, and they can come up with best, like this can
Yeah.
be their profession, chatting and making decisions, in a sense. But
That's a really good argument. Actually, people should use that more often. But also, I love your advice, and it's so true. Just, start small. I think, start small, reach out to people, start in some capacity.
Mhm.
It can't hurt the process. If anything, you will just benefit from it. So I love that. And I think I've seen people being intimidated by just trying it out. So
Exactly.
that's a great advice. Rashid, thank you so much. This was
Thank
such a
you.
treat, and we look forward to all your upcoming research projects. Best of luck in, pushing not only like implementing these projects and research, but also pushing this agenda forward in planning.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. If you found value in these conversations, please like our video and hit the subscribe button. Make sure to visit our website, podcast.what'swrongwith.xyz, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts so you never miss an episode. Please leave us a comment or review, or you can simply tell your friends about us. For more details on our guests, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. You can find our handles in the description below. And don't forget to join us next week. See you.